What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So recently, things have not been going well for Bungie. As we know, they announced a bunch of layoffs, there's been restructuring happening, and it appears Sony is moving in to have a more prominent role within the studio. But now we have Sony actually commenting and explaining some of this stuff and responding to different questions, which we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a classic franchise. It's getting a bit of an update with id Soft and also having a new release on the Super Nintendo. And then we'll also be taking a look at a certain job listing and profile that seems to point towards the resurrection of a long forgotten franchise within Sony and Japan studio. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members of the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with an incredibly rare system that we actually have never seen before. And now we at least have one photograph of this console, which we can see. This is posted up over on Twitter X. This is from Console Variation saying we have detailed pictures of one of the first physical GameCube ever made. It was called the Nintendo Dolphin. This GameCube is so rare that we were not allowed to upload it on the internet until now. More pics soon. Apparently they've had these pictures for a while and they had to figure out, I guess, maybe some stuff behind the scenes in order to release them. But yes, you can see right there. I mean, it even has kind of the Nintendo 64 sort of logo style, right? With that 3D cube looking thing, but Dolphin. I mean, we know that was like the code name for the system. We also have like the main chip on the board called Flipper, and this is really cool, but there's still some strange stuff here. People are trying to figure out, okay, why can't you show more about this thing? Some are wondering if there's NDAs in place or something, or how they're able to attain some of these pictures, where the system's from. So still a lot of questions around it, but they did say that they're going to release more images, I guess, at some point soon. So we'll keep an eye on this one. Maybe we can get full pictures even inside of the device. Also, I have good news and bad news for Borderlands fans. The good news is that the Borderlands movie is now out. The bad news is that the Borderlands movie is now out. At least that's according to Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. In fact, if you look on either of those review sites, well, on Rotten Tomatoes, it's currently sitting at a 6%. For a while it was at 0%, which sounds impossible because it's just means that I guess it's that bad. I saw many people commenting on this who were reviewing it on social media saying it's like an abomination to the big screen, which is, again, some crazy stuff going around for this. And then over on Metacritic, it's sitting at a 29. I will say Metacritic tends to have like lower scores in general for movies, but like IGN gave it a 3 out of 10. The New York Post gave it a 0 out of 10, saying it's a grueling 102-minute endurance test that's as lifeless as the video game it's based on. Wow, okay, that actually is a bit of a shot even at the Borderlands franchise. But I mean, this is the risk you take when you make something like a movie or a series. I mean, it could turn out to be good, and that would drive a ton of traffic to your video games that are already out there, right? Even legacy titles that are 10 years old, doesn't matter. People may leave the theater or click off of the series on Netflix or on Amazon or something and want to find like more ways to check out that media. In this case, though, I don't think it'll really hurt the Borderlands franchise, but it's not really going to help it. Maybe in like 20 years, people look back on this as it's so bad it's good, but based on how annoyed people sounded after seeing it online, it might not fall into that category. Oh, and here's some good news for PlayStation 4 and 5 owners, as the insanely addictive Vampire Survivors is finally heading to those platforms at the end of this month. They put out a full trailer for it here. It is releasing August 29th. So that, again, it's interesting that it took so long to get to the PlayStation, as it is already available on the Xbox, the Switch, of course, on Steam, PC. I've played on Steam Deck and stuff. But I mean, this is a game that looks very, very simple at its face. But then you play it and you'll realize, wow, I've been sitting here for hours playing a game that you don't really press many buttons for at all. You just gotta roll around in the middle with your character and destroy hordes and hordes of enemies. But again, there is an addictive nature to it. It's hard to kind of explain when you just see it on screen. It's something you want to pick up and try out for yourself. And trust me, you can sink quite a bit of time into this without even realizing it. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony and Bungie, which we know things have not been going well for Bungie. They've kind of been going through it recently, and actually it feels like almost ever since they were acquired by Sony, things haven't exactly been looking up for the studio. We've already talked about how they have laid off hundreds of people, and it appears that Sony has kind of is now done with the experiment of letting Bungie be independent and sort of manage themselves, and now they're moving more into a prominent role to oversee what's happening there. And of course, with all of this going on, the COO at Sony and president was going to be asked about this situation, and in fact, they were. And this was during an investors briefing where they'll go over all the different material they put out there around just the entirety of Sony. But this was something that was specifically asked. Hey, what's going on with that studio that you purchased for over $3 billion? Well, this is Hiroki Totoki, and I transcribed this from the call, which again, I'll have linked down below. You can check it out in full for yourself. But he says, so at this moment, Bungie restructuring has already been announced, and at this moment, as you correctly pointed out, for this restructuring, the purpose is cost, the structure and portfolio optimization, and those are the purposes. Simultaneously, we have to enhance the efficiency of the business. Back office functions should be integrated with the SIE and Bungie itself, so bringing Sony Interactive Entertainment and Bungie together, even behind the scenes, and that can be with all kinds of managerial positions or just development in general. The headcounts and also resources will be concentrated on Destiny 2 and the new live service title, Marathon, which we're still trying to figure out when Marathon will release. I think there are many hopeful people that it will come out in 2025, but they would still, I assume, do some sort of beta test or closed network, something just to see how things go. And then I'm sure they might even want to do an alpha just to do balancing and even get some feedback there. It goes on to say, so in any case, the organizational and the structural will be changed. And so we would like to optimize overall studio structure for that. He also goes on to talk about how other projects at Bungie, which they do incubate many projects and eventually decide if it's worth going into full-scale production for, will be transferred to PlayStation. So they'll kind of take over with some of these experiments within Bungie, because I'm sure that's not cheap either, since there's a lot of risk involved there with many projects that probably never see the light of day. However, there is one that appears to be the game that's being transferred over to PlayStation. We heard there was like 150 developers that will also be transferred to Sony, and it seems to be working on this Gummy Bears game. At least that's the code name for it. And we actually heard about this last year, but Jason Schreier did also reference it very recently last week in his report. But the last time we really heard about this, at least in depth, was from the Game Post, where they said, according to multiple sources with knowledge of Bungie's plans, Gummy Bears is the new game from the Destiny developer that incorporates many elements from the MOBA game genre, massive online battle arena, featuring a competitive PvP team versus team experience. Now, the thing I've gathered around this Gummy Bears game, it's very hard to place it in any one genre, in like the live service sector, anything. And for live service games now, you have to stand out completely and be incredibly unique so that it's hard to place you in any one genre. And the other thing I've seen people mention about Gummy Bears is the feedback around the game is that it's fun to play, which, I mean, at its core, that is what you are striving for. So I'm curious what this is exactly, because some have mentioned it has like fighting game elements to it, arena fighters, PvP, maybe PvE stuff. So we'll see. As again, moving over to Sony, they want to have a tighter grip, I think, on a project like this, just to make sure things go smoothly. As for Destiny 2, that's the other big thing. They need to figure out how to onboard new players. I wouldn't mind going back to Destiny 2, but it does feel like one of those situations of I don't know where to go to start. Like right now. I played it when it first came out, but a lot of content's gone in since then, and it's hard to keep up or understand really the path I should start with right now. So that's kind of the problem. They never started Destiny 3's development, which makes it a bit easier when you have a clean break and you can start up from scratch. However, the next thing up to keep an eye on is certainly Marathon, and here's hoping they can get it out next year, or at least have something a bit more meaningful than the last trailer they showed us, because to me, seems like a lot will be riding on that release. Next up, let's talk about an unannounced project within Sony and PlayStation Studios. This one coming from Firesprite, who typically gets mixed up with Firewalk. Firesprite was acquired by Sony, I believe, in 2021, and they've seemingly been working on a horror game. And that's at least interesting to hear. Hard to say how that would work out, say if it was new intellectual property, or maybe they want to tap an intellectual property that already exists. And it seems like that's the path forward for them. Now we can see this is posted up by MP First, and this is a listing on a resume of writer Ren Alex Rose. And they worked for Firesprite, as you can see, from 2022 until April of this year. And their project is an unannounced branching horror adventure game. Okay, interesting enough. But then you see the second bullet point, designed original, diverse characters, branching plot lines, lore, etc. within pre-established IP or intellectual property. Okay, and they also mentioned that this was developed for, it already has plans to be developed for PC along with PlayStation 5. Not shocking to hear, since we know that Sony is closing that window more and more from releasing on PS5 and then going to PC maybe even like a year later. Possible it releases day and date, but I'm not necessarily trending in that direction, just after recent comments from Herman Holst, of course, still kind of sticking, at least for now, to that time period, that little gap between PS5 and PC release. Now, the thing that's, so there are two games that they point out here, and I kind of had in mind at least one of them. The first one was Until Dawn, some sort of sequel to it, as we are getting that remaster later on this year. It makes more sense to do that now, because originally I thought, well, what's the point of that remaster? Okay, hold on. Now there's a sequel coming. That makes sense. And it's a branching path game. Okay. The other one that's pointed out here, and I don't know if this is some people really kind of wishing or trying to just will this into existence, the idea of Siren making a comeback. That was from Japan Studios, and the last one was in 2008, I remember, on the PlayStation 3. Since then, though, nothing. So, I mean, it would be interesting to see, as that would kind of be that, they mention here cosmic horror or psychological horror. I don't know if Siren is something that the mainstream would be like, oh yeah, I remember that game. I don't necessarily think so. But that also would give you some leeway to maybe play around with the lore or the gameplay or the setting and kind of bend and mold it maybe to a, not necessarily modern audience, but modern control schemes, other things you can do to bring it up to current systems there. I still think the most likely outcome here from Firesprite is a follow-up to Until Dawn, simply because, again, we have at least something that they're doing here with the Until Dawn franchise, but who knows, maybe they could shock us at a PlayStation showcase that hopefully is not that far off, and boom, brand new Siren game. Next up, let's talk about a new old release from idsoft. This, of course, coinciding with QuakeCon that is happening this weekend, or I guess it's technically started now, as it is like a 4-day event. Either way, we do have some new Doom stuff to take a look at here. Yeah, you can see Doom 1 and 2. Now, this is an enhanced edition of Doom 1 and 2, go figure. If you already have the game on a platform, the first or second one, apparently you can just upgrade to this for free, and there are some conflicting reports as to people able to upgrade, others not. I don't know, maybe even region specific. Hard to say, but if you already have either one, check to see if it's upgradable. If not, the entire package is $10, and there's quite a bit actually going on here as they list on their Steam page. Some of the highlights, they have Legacy of Rust. That's a new episode created in collaboration by id Software, Night Dive Studios, and Machine Games. Altogether, there are a total of 187 mission maps, 43 deathmatch maps in Doom and Doom 2, and get this, online cross-platform deathmatch and co-op. For up to 16 players, they have community-published mod support with an in-game mod browser, improved performance and multi-threaded rendering support up to 4K resolution. I mean, for $10, that's pretty good value. But then, something else popped up that absolutely floored me. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a new Super Nintendo game to look forward to of Doom. Like, this is the definitive Doom Super Nintendo experience, as they mention here. And this is all 4 Doom episodes, including Thy Flesh Consumed, added circle strafe, performance improvements, monster respawning on nightmare difficulty, level codes, and rumble support via an all-new controller. I assume that's going to have support for, say, like the 8-bit Do controller. I'm trying to figure out exactly what they're talking about here with the all-new controller. Now, this is something that's coming in 2025, as they show here in their card. And then they also have a collector's edition where they'll have 666 of them made. And I mean, it looks cool as like the blood splatter on it and stuff. But I mean, I'm just happy to get the cartridge itself, standard edition. It's limited run game, so I'm sure I'll have it set up nicely, the inheritance for my grandkids when it arrives. But the Doom itself was an interesting Super Nintendo release because it used the Super FX2 chip. So I'm curious what's going on inside this cartridge. Now, I'm sure there are ways, of course, at this time as technology has improved and flash carts in general have improved to get around that, but that would be a very interesting one to even tear down. So yeah, I'll pick this one up and we'll check it out. But what an interesting announcement. Yes, Doom and Doom 2 Enhanced Edition for all different consoles. And then also, we're bringing a new Super Nintendo cartridge to market with Rumble support for controllers. And in our last bit of news, let's actually stick with the Super Nintendo here for a minute. Actually, we're gonna have to head out to Japan and talk about the Super Famicom and the Satellaview attachment. Now, this is a really cool thing, even though it didn't make it outside Japan, that allowed you to connect your Super Famicom to the internet, and you could get all kinds of information, which did include games, or they had like magazines and all kinds of stuff. But it didn't really have a long life, and then it was just shut down. And go figure, the community has decided it's time to resurrect that service. We can actually see this posted up. This is over on Time Extension, where they say, according to Howling Fox, a member of the team, the broadcasts are done via a local client that is made by the team's organizer. The local client downloads the SAT data information from a hosted server, where live updates are pushed at set times before being re-encoded by updating through the local client. So this is really cool because, yes, we now have a Satellaview or Satellaview Plus. That's just a service you can tap into at this time with an emulator. And that's the only unfortunate part. There is no physical support yet. They do have mentioned on their website, as through the setup process, that it's at least there. So I do wonder if you could get to a position where, if you just happen to have a Satellaview attachment, if you could plug it in and it would work. How cool would that be if that was actually functional? Now, there is one other aspect here. Because they're able to distribute games, they actually have a call here, which we can see over on their official account, saying, attention to all Super Nintendo developers at Satellaview Plus. We are actively seeking homebrew games to be rebroadcast on the service. Please reach out to myself here on Discord to submit your games for broadcast, which, yeah, you almost get to the point where you have like a little digital store for the Super Famicom. Like you can push homebrew games out there and you're able to just kind of receive them on your end through the system and play it. Kind of like, yes, Sega Channel, but we had technically Sega Channel and Satellaview back then. We were technically tapping in to the internet way back during the 16-bit era. It just wasn't as widespread, but I think it'd be really cool to have this make some sort of comeback, just because we never got to experience the Satellaview, obviously, but just the idea of taking the 16-bit console, like an actual one, online again in potentially 2024 would be a really fun thing to check out. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, which of these WB properties would you be interested in seeing licensed out to create a new game or spin-off? Okay, so Batman actually led the way, which is interesting, although I guess we still have memories of the Arkham series, and we saw what happened with Kill the Justice League, and it hasn't gone over well for Batman with that, but still having a spin-off, maybe letting someone else take a shot at it, I get it. The Matrix, though, right there at number 2. And The Matrix has always been a franchise, a series for movies that makes sense for video games. So we've had at least things like Path of Neo, and maybe the most recent Matrix tech demo we had got people interested in it. Superman is the one I would like to see. We just have never had a really good Superman game, especially in the 3D modern era, I should say. We had some beat-em-up Superman games. They were all right. Fear, that'd be kind of cool to see that come back. That original Fear, I think, still holds up. And then Mortal Kombat, but I mean, we're kind of Mortal Kombat out, unless you get a spin-off and get a new Shaolin Monks, in which case, I'm all for it. But really, looking at WB, license as much stuff as you can out, because Disney is doing that now, and it seems like they're at least collecting money all over the place. It's pretty clear WB, it takes so long to develop these games, and they're just kind of hanging out, waiting and waiting and waiting for the cycle to come back around. In that time frame, you could technically license out a bunch of these, pretty much all of them. I'm sure there are studios that would like take a swing at any of these and just collect some money, and we get more games. So it's kind of like a win-win overall. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Sam, who says there was a 360 exploit back in the day, rewriting custom firmware to the disk drive. BenQ readers being the easiest to mod, offline play was the only caveat. I do remember that. That was a big thing back then. You would rewrite the disk drive board. You could rewrite firmware to it. You would flash it, and then it would be able to read burned disks. The only problem is what we're aiming for now with the 360, especially that it's legacy, is a soft mod. Basically meaning you don't have to open the console to modify it. It can all be done through a USB port and maybe some files from your PC to move over. It's just the 360 has always been a pain to modify. And I mean, technically to Microsoft's credit, they did a pretty good job in terms of like system level security, not necessarily for the disk drive. Like back in the day, those things getting flashed all over the place. People, for some reason, knew BenQ. Like, it's not, you typically don't know the name of the disk drive, but people would come in and be like, does this have a BenQ? Let's pop the disk drive open and find out. It does. Okay, I'll take 5 of these. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike, leave some comments down below about everything we talked about here today. And of course, if you missed Newswave yesterday, you can check it out here in the card next to me, or any of the tech videos I do. I also have those over the weekend, and I'll leave one down here for you guys to check out. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time for Newswave.